The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You'll never guess what. You're back with David Mackey's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com, on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So, I ask that you push the donate button or subscribe to the archives, and maybe you can also get yourself some great merchandise from the station's website. You could possibly buy a CD of your favorite host shows for a previous season. Potentially get yourself an EMP-proof thumb drive with survival documents, or maybe a seed pack, 75,000 seeds, stay in the freezer for years. But follow the instructions carefully when you're making your choices. This is show number 505.
500.
Yes, and we're talking about the hypothesis, and this is part 7 in the series. Very important, these 0-0 shows that we have. And you know what, Mackie? I'm going to say hello to nobody in the chat room.
Me neither.
I was going to say nobody's in the chat room, but I didn't know which joke was going to be funnier. Hey, nobody. Blasphemous Buddha. Fled, Batsman, Zog, and Acid, they're all there.
Everybody. But look, Dave is right. So and the key thing, what we try to do in the even hundreds, is to bring it all together and give you a bit of an overview. Because there's always a reason why we bring things up as show cycles, right? Reincarnation show cycle, the UFO show cycle, the 411 show cycle, etc., etc. And what is really important is to go back to primary sources. What's a primary source? A primary source is either an eyewitness or a first-hand account of something, right? But not a translation of a translation of a translation, or an opinion that you've heard from your brother's mother's friend who heard it of the priest, who got it, of some guy in a pub. That's not a primary source. A primary source is as close to the thing happening as you can get, right? So like primary, the pyramids, that's a primary source. There they are. They're there. Boom, right? That's a primary source. And so what we're doing here as part of our shows, we're trying to bring as many primary sources as we can. Guests, researchers as well. We do a few more interviews in the near future, I should think, maybe after Christmas. But certainly, and Solaris does a great job with that. She brings people in and talks about a number of wonderful things. But the important thing here is we're trying to get as far back in time as possible, right? Now, unless you know Sumerian cuneiform, you have a hard time reading the tablets yourself. But we've gone through a number of different translations, and we've looked at the translations and looked at the ones that were most complete, and also most complete from a contextual point of view, if you will. Yes. And so this translation we're going to share with you today is by Stephanie Daly. Stephanie Daly has gifted us, well, not the Shiny Side Out, but the world, this wonderful translation of the cuneiform tablets. And you can get this, if you wanted to, at this website, genius.com. Simple as that. GENIUS.com. Just go there, and it's a secure site, HTTPS, and you can download it yourself. And you can look at other translations as well, if you wish. But this one seemed to be the most contextually and meaning, as far as meaning is concerned, the most coherent translation that we came across. And this is the Hypothersis epic, abridged because it's too long. And we're going to share some of it with you, and some more pertinent points, and some others. And we discussed it at length in the Igigi show cycle. Remember the Watchers, the giants, that, you know, the biblical giants, if you will, the sons of God that went and lay with the daughters of the earth, or daughters of men. It created this hybrid race of giants and heroes, etc., etc. Right? So those are the same people. But Dave, why don't you take us through, you know, the first bits here? And again, primary sources are critical for research, guys, because this is also a primary source for our Bible, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, we mentioned it in a former hour, in a prior hour to the show, but there, because of the damage to this relic, a lot of gaps are there's gaps making the text incomplete, and we'll just simply say, you know, there's either lines 3, 4, 5 lines missing, or just incomplete. Okay, because the text was on a large flat stone and it was broken apart. It was put back together where it could fit, and it's more like a jigsaw puzzle. But the text, as it continues across, does, you know, read this story that we're going to mention. All right. When the gods, instead of man, did the work, bore the loads, the gods' load was too great. The work too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Anu, their father, was king. And I think it might be good, Meki, if we alternate where the gaps are.
Yeah, sure. So the 3 dots between paragraphs means I've abridged it. I've taken text out. If it's within the paragraph itself, that means it's incomplete. Right. So this is actually my abridgment, right? So yes, good. So this paragraph says the gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River and then dug out the Euphrates.
They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years they bore the excess. Hard work, night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our Chamberlain and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let's carry the Lord, the counselor of the gods, the warrior from this dwelling. Then, and as missing text, made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers.
And there's a bit of abridged text again, but the gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for the fire god, they flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch, which is fairly specific, actually, if you think about it, right? The middle watch would have been around 1 a.m., 2 a.m. The house was surrounded, the god had not realized. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. Ekur was surrounded. Elil had not realized.
My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Elil, your house is surrounded.
Nusku barred his door, took up his weapons and stood in front of Elil. Nusku made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Oh my lord, your face is sallow as tamarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? Now, just a quick interjection before we keep reading, and my apologies, but there are 2 things I think we need to say here. One, this phrase, Nusku made his voice heard, or someone made their voice heard, keeps on popping up all over the place in these ancient texts. Okay? Now, I believe that the Anunnaki were communicating telepathically in concepts, etc., unless it was really called for to talk to a number of people, right? Because I believe that the telepathy they had, again, this is just my opinion, right, was probably most effective in one-on-one or one-to-few communications. When you had one-to-many, I think it may become less effective. So we saw voice or audible sounds being used for communications for larger groups, and maybe for statements that carried some impact potentially. So I would imagine that a husband and wife would mostly communicate telepathically, possibly with their children as well. But if you were giving a speech out in the world, you probably would speak. If you're addressing the government, you would probably speak. If you're making an official statement about something, you would probably speak. That's my opinion. That's why I think this keeps popping up. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. Is it against me that they have risen? Shall I do battle? And there's some missing text. What did I see with my own eyes? A rabble was running around my door. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Let Nusku go out and find out the word of the Yigigi, who have surrounded your door.
You know what strikes me, Dave? And as we go through the text more and more, you might feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
How commonsensical it is. So this is what's happening. So Elil is in his house, 2 a.m. in the morning, and there's this rabble of people that have shown up at his house. And Nusku, his guard, says, "Hey, we've locked the door, boss, but I don't know what they want." So Elil then, and again, this might be also when he makes his voice heard, might be communication over great distances, because clearly he's talking to Anu, right? So Elil goes, "Well, what am I going to do here? What should I do?" And Anu goes, "Well, yeah, fair enough. You know what? Let Nusku go out and let him find out what the Igigi want." This is a conversation that would happen. I mean, if Dave was, I don't know, let's say Dave and I are in the army, and I'm Dave's commanding officer. Dave's house is surrounded one night by someone. He'd go up the line of communication. He might go, "Oh, Mackie, listen, something is happening here. This is what's happening. Oh, dude, maybe send one of the soldiers out to figure out what's going on and talk to them." For a mythical text, written 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, maybe longer. This is terribly modern in its flow, if you will. Sorry, but yeah, that's just right. I mean, it's just astounding.
The text also shows a hierarchy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's my turn.
Yes.
Elil made his voice heard and spoke to Vizier Nusku. Okay, now we know he's a vizier. So Vizier is in many instances like the advisor to the head of state in
Probably where the
in
word
Middle
came
East.
from.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Nusku, open your door, take up your weapons, and stand before me. Be my meat shield. Anyways, that's very modern. Sorry, your turn, Dave.
Nusku opened his door, took up his weapons, and went before Elil. In the assembly of all the gods, he bowed, then stood and told the message. The message. You can read the message, Mickey.
Okay. Your father Anu, you counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninota, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rebel, who is in charge of the fighting, who declared war, who went to the door of Elil. Sorry, before we go on. So clearly Anu is the head of this hierarchy. Your father Anu, right? Anu, the father of all the gods. Your counselor warrior Elil, clearly the person in charge here. Your chamberlain Ninota, another person clearly of high position, and your canal controller Inugi. So this is the person that controls the canals, like once water's in the flow of the water, I imagine, etc. Maybe even the build. Now these four here in our hierarchy have sent me, and this is Nusku, right? This is the Elil's right hand man. They've sent me to say who's in charge of this rebel. Who's in charge of the fighting? So clearly there must have been some fighting that broke out. Who declared war? So clearly, someone must have, started some kind of violence. And who ran to the door of Elil? So these are unbelievably modern context questions. Dave, take next. That's interesting.
Elil, then there's a gap. Every single one of us declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard, the trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain till Elil. Nushku took his weapons, went and returned to Elil.
So they are now in negotiations. They're communicating.
But
right?
so every single one of us gods.
Yeah, the Gigi, yes.
Yeah.
So in the pantheon, or so we think, so we believe, of the Sumerians / Babylonians, there were the Anunnaki, the elder gods, and Anu was the leader of the Anunnaki. I guess it's sort of goes with it. And then there were the Igigi, which seem to be the junior gods, or let's call it the working class, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. But there's the clear division between the gods. So they're all gods. Let's be very clear. Right? They're not slaves and masters. These are all gods, brothers, cousins, if you will, in a way. But so they've just complained now. They've gone. Dave has shared the complaints. They've given to Nusku, and the next bit is, in my opinion, amazing. Enlil listened to their speech. His tears flowed. Enlil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree. With you to the sky, show your strength. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, call up one god and let them cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. What he's saying is, we should have seen this coming, but we didn't listen. We heard noise, but we didn't understand what was going on. And then there's a bit of destroyed text, another destroyed text tasks. And then, Dave, why don't you take it here?
While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, and while Belit Ili, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Now, Meki, call up one and cast him for destruction is very much like the Book of Enoch.
It is.
That's right.
Is. And funny enough,
because it requires the DNA of the one of the gods.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I wonder, I'm pretty sure he has, but if you look at the Prometheus movie, Prometheus, and at the beginning sequence where one of the engineers drinks this potion and then is pretty much
into the stream and then
dissolves. It disintegrates.
Yeah.
But into his molecular components. So he's not destroyed, but his molecules, his DNA even is surviving. So it's reminiscent of this in many ways. Right? But why don't you take it further, my friend? This is fascinating stuff.
Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Ilil, have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rabble was running around Elil's door. Ea made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are they blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is a missing text. Belit Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a mortal man, so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Ilil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Meki.
Belit Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let them bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked, "The midwife of the gods, wise Mami, you are the womb goddess, to be the creator of mankind. Create a mortal that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Eli. Let him bear the load of the gods." Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. She is the womb goddess. "On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix the clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drum beat forever after. Let a ghost come into existence from the god's flesh. Let her proclaim it as her living sign. And let the ghost exist so as to not forget the slain god." They answered yes, the assembly, the great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. So essentially what happened here, in order to prevent a revolt, and in fact, not so much just prevent a revolt, but because clearly something had gone wrong in their governance here, and they had probably asked too much of their fellow gods, the Igigi, they decided to create a slave race, or a race that will do the work by digging out the canals. And in order to do that, they would take matter from a god and mix it with matter from the earth, clay. Clay has always been associated with the earth. And I wonder what the original word actually means. Clay, the word clay itself. I have to do the research, right? You know what I mean? So she mixes the clay with his flesh and blood. Does it mean she uses earth stock or earth DNA or maybe the DNA of Bigfoot or similar hominids or hominoids or Homo sapiens in order to create this hybrid race? I don't know. But we also learn that the assembly, and this is the key thing here. That's why we say Yahweh Elohim and not Yahweh. So Yahweh Elohim is God in the Bible, okay? But it's plural. Yahweh Elohim is a plural form in the Hebrew. And what we're learning here is the Anunnaki, even though Anu is the highest, the assembly decides what happens. They answered yes in the assembly. So there's an assembly of gods, a council, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And the great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. Now the great Anunnaki in the plural form here, the great Anunnaki as a body yes. of government, right? So it becomes, once you start reading it and you really open your eyes and try to understand it, it becomes very clear as to what we're talking about. The next bit is even more amazing, Dave.
Yeah, just one comment here that I have. And what we also learnt was the midwife of the gods, wise Mami. The Australian Aboriginals' belief that Ami came down and created all man. The word similarity is too close to be a coincidence.
Completely agree.
And it was
completely agree.
I know, right? All right. So I have carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I have relieved you of your hard work. I have imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I have undone the fetter and granted freedom. They listened to the speech of hers and were freed from anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mammy, but now your name shall be Mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise Mami went into the room of fate. The womb goddesses were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation, for Enki, staying in her presence, made her recite it. when she had finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces of clay and set 7 pieces on the right, 7 on the left. Between them, she put down a mud brick. She made use of a reed, opened it to cut the umbilical cord, called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddesses 7 and 7. 7 created males, 7 created females. For the womb goddess is creator of fate. He, then there's some missing text. Them 2 by 2. More missing text. Them 2 by 2 in her presence. Your turn, Mackie.
Yep, just a quick thing here as well.
Mhm.
So I'm of the opinion that a Homo sapiens race was already in existence at this time, for whatever reason. And that's the race that they then, I guess, hybridized with the
Yes.
Anunnaki, if that's the right term, in order to create a stronger race of Homo sapiens. Because clearly the Anunnaki and the Igigi were much more powerful. And if you look at the artwork that the Sumerians and Babylonians leave us, it's very clear that their gods are 8, 9, 10 feet tall.
That's right.
And built like a front rower.
Yes,
Right?
that'll do.
Yeah, that'll do. And so what is described here, the womb goddesses were assembled, which I believe are just I guess incubation machines.
They could be.
And then, yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, again, the trotting of the clay, a reciting of incantations, so clearly some kind of voice command, maybe to computers. And then, pinching off pieces of material, which clearly isn't clay, but is something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she made use of a reed. She opened it to cut the umbilical cord, and she called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddesses, right? So clearly, these are probably machines that have,
A reed looks like a long, slender cylinder.
yes,
You could be like a pipette.
yes, exactly.
All right?
So
if you looked at it from a point of view of not understanding anything about medicine,
that's it.
you would come up. It may appear like this, but today,
Exactly.
if there was people had stirred stuff and done things and wanted to, pinch it off, I think that's a great description if it were clay. But if it weren't, then they used some procedures and made 7 and 7. I think there's it's like the Ezekiel's, wheels within wheels. I think if you don't know what you're looking at, that's how you come up with a description. But yes,
it is
fascinating.
100%. It's a Luddite description. You're 100% correct. Of probably a highly technical procedure, right? So someone is watching something which they have no idea about it, and they just try to put it in the best terms they can. I mean, that's why back in the olden days, people used to call what we today call flying saucers. They used to call flying chariots. This is the best. And you're right. Like wheels within wheels, right?
It's all they had that was similar to what they were looking at.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So and again, it is almost as though this was an eyewitness account that was put down here, right? Which are, and that's why I'm talking about primary sources. But interestingly enough, it goes further. Mami, this is of course the wise Mami that is now the mistress of all gods, made these rules for people, and by people I should think she means now mankind.
Yes.
Or the newly hybridized mankind. In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Well, clearly it's not a mud brick, it's some kind of device, clearly. Belet Ili, wise Mami, shall be honored. So she makes sure that she gets the credit and she's honored, I guess. And that might be a status thing within that society, because clearly, scientific and technical knowledge, ability, and know-how is clearly highly prized in this Anunnaki society. Because she did what she was told to do, but she did it really well, and everybody kissed her feet. So she's not a famous actress, she's not a famous sportsman like what we do. She is an outstanding scientist and I guess technician, engineer. Right?
It would be the pleasure of the solution being announced and a ritual to appreciate that decision or the ownership of the task.
100%. And but it shows you society that I believe is largely merit based. It's something we've moved away from significantly.
That's quite a pity, actually.
Completely. So again, a ballad elite, wise mommy shall be honored. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself. A man to a girl, and there's here missing text again. But here what she says is the mother shall sever herself. That means the mother is meant to cut the umbilical cord.
Yes.
It seems. Right? Again, why? I don't know. Maybe, and I want to do some research on that as well. Again, there's missing text.
So wait. So the task of doing that is a motherhood task of liberation of the newborn into life. So rather than someone else doing it, as impersonal as that, today's thing, the doctor, who wants to cut the umbilical cord? Oh, well, we'll give the scissors to the father. And then the father realizes it's the toughest, it's tougher than, carbon fiber. It's crazy. What are these scissors, blunt? Right? No, but the whole connectivity with the child, the mother, and having her do it, I think there's something very special about that.
I agree. Absolutely. And that's a good point you made there. So I guess it's that sort of the sacred female or the aspect to that as well. Very interesting. Now, and then there was missing text in her bosom, and then a beard can be seen on a young man's cheek. In gardens and waysides, a wife and a husband choose each other. So, two things we learn here. Puberty is expressed by beard, right? And also we're learning here that arranged marriage isn't really a thing. A wife and a husband, they choose each other in gardens and waysides. So there's no law laid down as to how people should find each other or marry in that new human society, if you will. They choose each other. So maybe love, who knows, right? Then the womb goddesses were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month as the term of fate. When the 10th month came, she slipped in a staff and opened the womb. So this is again the gestation period for a human embryo. Okay? Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head. What do you see doctors do in surgery?
That's right.
Okay. So no stray hairs would come over. I mean, she might have been in full garb. Again, eyewitnesses, right? She performed the midwifery, put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down a mud brick. Again, slightly incomprehensible, but clearly, or in my opinion, clearly not a drawing in flour, and definitely not a mud brick. But again, and she put on her belt. Maybe, again, part of the uniform, maybe part of the machinery. I don't know. And the blessing may very well have been, a technical command line that she's, repeating to the computer potentially. But then, Dave, then it gets really interesting, I think.
Yes. 600 years, less than 600 passed. And there's 4 question marks here in the text. And the country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Elil had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I'm losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that Surapu disease. Mickey?
Yeah, sorry. Surapu means frost or cold. I looked it up.
Yeah, cool. Shall break out. Now, there was one Atrahasis whose ear was open to his god Enki. He would speak with his god, and his god would speak with him, Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his lord. How long will the gods make us suffer? Will they make us suffer illness forever? Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his servant. Call the elders, the senior men. Start an uprising in your house. Let the heralds proclaim. And there's some missing text. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods. Do not pray to your goddesses. But search out the door of Namtara. Bring as baked loaf into his presence. May he be shamed by the presence and wipe away his hand. Meki.
Yeah. Now, sorry. This is critical, and it's critical because again, there's really nothing mystical or fantastical about this.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a reporting of what happened. So time passed. Humans,
600 years.
Yeah, that's what they said there.
And Elil is still there.
Oh, Elil is still there. Oh, don't worry, Elil is still around today, my friend. But what happened is that humanity had grown, and what is really interesting is this: they were noisy. They're making a racket. Now, I don't know what the number of the Igigi or the Anunnaki were, but it supports, I think, our hypothesis here that they were using indeed telepathy to communicate with each other on a smallish basis, like if it's small groups. Whereas humans clearly didn't have that capacity.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that capacity, and they made a lot of noise, right? And Elil didn't like that very much, so he ordered a disease to be released amongst the humans. And again, Surupu is frost cold. Now, is it a common cold? Is it the flu? It'll certainly shut people up, if they were sick.
Yep.
Now, Atrahasis, one of the human beings, who was able to talk to Enki. His ear was open to his god. Enki meant, in the ancient parlance, when your ear is open to something, means you understand it.
Yes.
So either he understood the language of the gods or Enki understood his language, whatever it might have been, but they spoke to each other. And he made his voice heard, meaning they didn't speak telepathically, but they spoke, like we do, with voices. And he wants for the illness to stop, the suffering to stop. And Enki, the good god that he is, again, he's appeared to Elil, make no mistake, he gives advice to Atrahasis. He doesn't intervene himself, he gives advice to Atrahasis and says, look, you got to get all the people together and make some noise, and stop worshipping the gods, and also go to Namtara and bring a gift, bring bread, bring bread, and he will be shamed by you bringing bread. Okay, now that's the advice that Enki gives to Atrahasis. Now, but this is what happened then. The elders listened to his speech. Okay, that's Atrahasis' speech. They built a temple for Namtara in the city. Heralds proclaimed, and there's text missing, they made a loud noise in the land. They did not revere their god. They did not pray to their goddess, but searched out the door of Namtara, brought a baked loaf into his presence. The flour offerings reached him, and he was shamed by the presence, and wiped away his hand. The Surupu disease left them. The gods went back to their regular offerings. Okay, and that's as much as we have here. But again, there isn't terribly much mystical here, Dave, or magical or anything. These are all pretty much straightforward activities, sessions of giving advice, having discussions, having real world problems, right? So Elil says, "Oh, you're too loud, man. This is horrible. Give them the common cold. That'll shut them up, or whatever disease it might have been, right?" And then Atrahasis goes, "Oh, this is terrible. We've got this disease," which of course means they didn't have disease before.
That's right.
How long? Yeah. How long will the gods make us suffer? Will they make us suffer illness forever? Meaning, we didn't suffer before. We didn't have illness before, right? And then the advice is, well, you got to speak up for yourself. And just so it's like a passive aggressive sit-in, if you will, right? We're not going to pray to these gods anymore. We're going to pray to this god. We're going to bring him gifts, and he will wipe his hand away. I don't know what that means. It means maybe that Namtara had the power to take. Maybe Namtara was the guy that brought the disease in the first place. I don't know, right? But dude, isn't that astounding? I think it's astounding. So this is
the wipe his hand, Mickey. I'm stuck on wipe his hand.
Me too.
So right now, we have technology which is motion technology. We can do something with our phone, with our hand, the TV. We can go in and out of doors just by presence. Yeah. I'm wondering whether it's imagine if we had VR goggles on and we used our hands to move screens that the other people couldn't see. I wonder if there's a technology behind it which was not apparent to those people who were viewing it.
But it's a good point, because I mean, if you look at it in this really modern context, and make no mistake, all of the Anunnaki or even Igigi, they have watch on both wrists. They have watch-like things.
That's right.
And they're seen to carry tablets, and they're seen to carry cylinders as well,
pine cones and a handbag.
Pine cone, and it's like a grandma's handbag too.
That's right.
It's so it, and we look at it and we go, oh yeah, it's just but some of the imaginings of some primitive people. These are not primitive people. Look at the quality of the artwork. Look at the finishing of the gates. The many colored mosaics. It's head and shoulders above what came after.
So remember, the Anunnaki came here. They're named for, the coming to Earth. They arrived here. So they arrived here. They made the Igigi, and then the Igigi complained because the toil was too much, and so then they made humans to toil. But still,
right?
But still, these humans were, they say, mortal in the text.
Yeah.
But there's more coming, so stay tuned. That's very important. Like, they weren't just people who were here that were considered good at stuff. They weren't, put on pedestals as just being regular people on Earth who summoned this up. They clearly had a technology. They were working towards a tremendous goal, whatever that was. And it is said that humans were there were created to mine for them, and all this other toil that's in the story. That's the actual story. Yeah,
this is one of the, and if you read it right, and especially the number 7 comes up, other things as well. Created man and woman. Nowhere does it say that man was created first, and then woman was created out of his rib. That was added later in order to foster a certain level of patriarchic control. And people change things all the time in order to make the outcome better for them. So just look at the Bible in that light, and don't close your mind to the fact that it might be based on much older source texts like this one, for example. But there's more, like Dave said. Wait, there's more. A further component part of the hypothesis, and I think we should be able to get through this. A further component part of the hypothesis is the fact that some members of these high civilizations, like the Anunnaki, but there might have been others, have survived to the present day. In fact, it might not have been the first time they interacted with humans, like back day. I mean, the Anunnaki might go back a lot further.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking about personal immortality rather than bloodlines. But naturally, there seem to be bloodline connections as well, with the same families and groups of people ostensibly appearing in charge of running civilization, and by extension us, their chattel. Now, take this into consideration. Being born into power affords you A, a different view of the world, which while appearing callous, merely reflects the position of power that is held. B, the view that small lives and small people do not matter. And C, strategic thinking in favor of tactical thinking, to the point of centuries and millennia rather than years and decades. This would, of course, be exacerbated if those powerful personages also happened to be immortal. Human lives would truly just seem like ants or mayflies. So then, what is the motivation for the super rich and powerful? And must have been through the ages. Motivation for the super powerful and super rich. Agencies within the box that have gleaned the nature of the box and are using it to their own advantage. Okay, motivation number 1, control and status quo. Motivation number 2, self-perpetuating stability. Motivation number 3, personal immortality. Then finally, the overarching motivation is, how do we achieve all that? It means to achieve all of the above. All ancient and modern civilizations revere gold and metals of the platinum group of elements. Ancient gold mines have been discovered that date back thousands and tens of thousands of years. Do the research, you'll find it's actually true. Ancient legends speak of gods that created man to specifically mine gold, and we've just discussed the Anunnaki. Why mine gold? Why is gold important, Dave?
Yeah, we discussed that gold itself, while having non-corrosive properties and has many applications in technology today, does not really warrant the almost mystical reverence it enjoys. One cannot eat it. Hold that thought. One cannot fashion weapons from it because it's too soft. And it is not good as a tool of any kind. Again, too soft. It's quite heavy, so not easily transported. Well, you actually can eat it. That's why I asked you to hold that thought. Now, we have to interject now with a new concept for you. It may be new to you. It's certainly not new to Meki and I now. And that is orbitally rearranged monatomic elements. Now, you may know them as ORMs, O-R-M-E-S. And just think about this. It's going to hit you or T-bone you. This is coming from stage right. When you eat it, there's potential life extension properties through shoring up telomeres against decay, whereas it's believed it creates telomerase. It's known as mana or ambrosia or mufcut in Egypt.
Yes. Yeah.
It's also known as food of the gods and chosen humans as well. Ancient mythologies speak of the elixir of life in connection with gold and also some specific plants. Almost all ancient cultures place the gods on a mountain, a high place. They all either ingest gold or liquid white gold or a plant extract to extend their life, and they have all treat individual humans with indifference at best. So there's a commonality between all of those deities. But they seem generally to see us as chattel, a resource to be used and abused for their gain. Orbitally rearranged monatomic elements is not only important for life extension, but seems to be in combination with mercury powder, fuel, or explosive, which seems to be to have been harnessed by the Nazis and later the US and Soviet scientists in covert black ops programs. And we're talking about red mercury specifically.
Yes.
And the torsional physics of it when it's electrified in a vessel or held within a magnetic field. The Nazi bell comes to mind. Area 51. Red Mercury scare of the 1990s. That was the Ballotechnik explosive. And Project Paperclip, the project that brought the Nazi scientists to the US. The Russians had something very, very similar. Meki.
It might even be a catalyst, certainly within the Nazi Bell program, that made time or interdimensional travel possible. I know this sounds crazy, I know, but it only sounds crazy because these are fields of inquiry and scientific research which have been actively discouraged, at least as far as public discourse is concerned. Okay? Because scientists looked at this kind of stuff quite openly back in the 19th and early 20th century. Maybe exploiting flaws within space-time or the ability to open gateways to other dimensions or time streams with a physics that is suppressed, not fully understood, and lost to most of us. The Nazis were also fascinated by ancient sites and mythology. What did they know? What arcane knowledge did they have access to? Those Indiana Jones movies, they are not really all made up. Nazi scientists did go try to find the Ark of the Covenant. They did go to Central Asia and elsewhere to find these mythological objects. Hitler was very interested. In fact, most leading Nazis were fascinated by the occult, ancient civilizations, members of secret societies, and funded many expeditions and work groups and programs. I mean, there's this whole undercurrent of the occult within the Nazi movement, right? And in fact, they shut down rival occult and secret societies. Okay, that was the thing. Freemasons were shut down, and others as well made it to the camps too. And there's another interesting one here, right? Why was Operation High Jump undertaken by the Allies in 1947? If you haven't heard of High Jump, we've done a show cycle on it, and I urge you to look it up. Is there a surviving ancient base in Antarctica that is now run by surviving Nazi scientists? And the three things here that are really interesting. Antarctica is the hardest place to travel to today. Certain people are not allowed to travel to Antarctica at all. Not at all. And this is a challenge I have for everybody.
Go there anyway.
You do, right? And if you don't believe this to be true, go and try to go to Antarctica. And not just on a guided tour. No, you go and do whatever you want. Now, the interesting thing here is this, Operation High Jump. There was a massive flotilla that was sent to Antarctica in 1947. This is just 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 carrier groups. Now, this is only 2 years after the end of World War II. 2 years. America, the Allies, Germany, Japan, everybody is licking their wounds. The world, or large parts of the world, are in ruins. You've got 2 smoldering nuclear craters in Japan. Most of Europe is in ruins. America has taken a huge hit. And millions and millions of tens of millions of people have died. Millions of soldiers have died. Right? Scores, hundreds, if not hundreds of battleships were sunk. So they
a massive shortage of food and resources.
Yeah. Yet the Allies put together this massive expeditionary force to Antarctica. Why? Well, for scientific surveying.
Yeah, sure.
What a load of nonsense.
That's right.
That is. I mean, literally, you have to see this in the context of the times. The world is in pain, and they had to scrap the bottom of the. In fact, what's his name is on it?
Admiral
Byrd. Admiral Byrd is part of this, right? Yep. The intrepid Antarctic explorer. He's in it, and when that battle group comes back, he's institutionalized for a couple months in South America.
Yeah, and then
they locked him up. No, there's so much wrong with Operation High Jump. It's not even funny. I do urge you all to go and have a look as to what it actually was.
It appears on the face of it that they'd found something and went to investigate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something big.
Something massive. And enough to warrant an expedition of that size. An expedition of that size would have been quite a thing at any time. Okay, to put together a force, a strike force, because these are soldiers, right?
That's right.
Of that size would have been remarkable, no matter what the time was. It makes it astounding, considering that it was in 1947. Okay, completely astounding. I think we have enough time, Dave, for you to share it probably a little bit more.
No, 1 minute.
Oh, we don't have any more time to say it anymore. Oh, that's funny. But look, as we go through this, it'll become clear that this is all connected, right? And all of these things actually, sort of feed off each other. And this ancient tech, it seems, was harvested by the Nazis and others. That's why the Allies were racing to these sites. I mean, there are a couple of sites in Germany specifically, where you ask yourself, why on earth are you going for these facilities? They have no value in and of themselves. And yet, the Allies did go out. They let the Russians get to Berlin first because they wanted to get to those research sites.
Yeah, that's right.
Berlin!
Ed Meckie exclaims, this is David Meckie's Shiny Side Out. This is the end of show 505. Coming up next is Jer Bear's awesome show, After Hours. So stay tuned for his show. Enjoy, and we'll see you next week. And if you're watching this on YouTube, do like and subscribe, and share it with others. Thank you. Take care.